guys, it's Thursday, June 17th, yes. And we're going to read chapter 5 of Almost Super. Remember yesterday they got to school and they wondered what Juanita's power was, but Juanita wasn't at school, was she? So this chapter is called In the Bag, Benny, in the Bag. I'll admit it, Juanita's absence made me more than a little nervous. I don't like being in the dark, but Tuesday night something happened that turned my nervous feeling into complete terror. It went like this. Tuesday night I got in bed and fell asleep, and I woke to a loud siren blaring through the house. Boop! 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 I heard that noise 100 times, but I never did get used to it. I woke up with my heart trying to claw its way out of my throat. The battle alarm. I turned on my reading lamp, hopped out of bed, and crossed over to Benny. He's a heavy sleeper. I made the mistake of letting him sleep through a battle once, and he still hasn't forgiven me. Benny, the Johnsons are attacking, I yelled into his ear. We've got a battle on our hands. He opened his eyes, but still didn't look awake. I don't want to carry that donkey. He tried pulling the covers over his head, but I shook him again. Benny, a battle! I watched his understanding spread across his face. A battle? I nodded. Hot dog, Benny said. Maybe we'll get put on the squad. Do you think they have our super suits ready yet? Going to your first battle is a big deal. After you get your power, you usually go to the very next fight. But it had only been a little over 24 hours since Benny and I had gotten our powers, which meant there hadn't been time to design super suits that would work with our powers. And now that I thought about it, how do you design a suit around a belly button power? Benny leaped off his bed, grabbed his bathrobe, and raced out the door. It's like our birthday, he shouted over his shoulder. The alarm fell silent. I grabbed my bathrobe and slippers and followed Benny out the door. Though they have super suits, but we think we have superpowers too. Remember, I have my superpower bracelets on, my colors, orange and black. All right, let's see what happens. Downstairs, Benny bounced through the house like a hyperactive puppy. He kept shouting into the darkness, asking where his super suit was. Dad walked into the room, turned on the lights. Rodney is downstairs getting the orders, he said. Everybody else, out to the backyard. We have to make this look convincing. I don't know how the rest of my relatives handle battle alarms, but every time ours goes off, we march outside to pretend like we're performing a fire drill. We have to make it look believable in case any of the neighbors wake up. In fact, before I knew the family secret, that's what I thought too, that my dad was really careful when it comes to fires. We walked outside. The cold air hit at my ears and cheeks, and the inside of my nose froze. Most of our neighbors sleep through the alarm, or if they don't, they never say anything about it. But one neighbor, Mr. Cooper, doesn't much care for the whole piercing alarm in the middle of the night routine. Hopefully he'll sleep through it this time, Dad said, looking at Mr. Cooper's house. My father didn't have any shoes on, but his feet hovered a few inches above the snowy ground, one of the many benefits of being able to fly. A light flared in Mr. Cooper's window. Light sleeper, Dad grumbled. I watched as a balding head appeared at the glass. After a bit of struggling, Mr. Cooper pulled open the window and stuck his head outside. Evening, Carl, Dad waved, his voice cheerful and steady. Or is it morning? I didn't look at the clock. William, Mr. Cooper shouted. What in the... Uh-oh, no obscenities, Dad said. We have little Benny out here with us. Hey, Benny said. I'm not little. I've been doing push-ups. I meant little as in young, Dad said. I've heard cursing before, Benny said. I'm not a baby. I counted 6 swear words in the time Dad and Benny had their conversation. Why don't you get your fire alarm fixed? Mr. Cooper yelled. They work just fine, Dad said. The superhero code, the code of laws all superheroes live by, demands that superheroes always tell the truth, without fail. However, we are allowed to lie to protect our identity, or when talking to supervillains, or in the name of justice. Actually, now that I think of it, the superhero code allows us to lie quite a bit. We're doing a fire drill, Dad continued. You can never be too careful, especially when you have children in the house. You do have a fire drill every month? Mr. Cooper shouted. It's not rocket science. You wake up, you walk out the house. For the love of Pete, give it a rest. Dad made a big deal of counting heads. Yep, we're all safe, he said loud enough so Mr. Cooper could hear. And we made good time. Let's all go inside and get back to sleep. You don't even have all your kids out here. And where's your wife? Mr. Cooper yelled a few more curse words into the frigid March air and then pulled his head back in through the window. We filed back inside where Rodney waited for us. What are we looking at? Dad asked, his voice eager. A citizen called the superhero line and reported a suspected robbery, Rodney said. The superhero line was a number that anybody could call to report a major crime. Rodney had written a program and listened to all the calls and sounded the alarm whenever there was a big one. Grandpa made assignments, Rodney said, looking at the pad of paper in his hand. You and Mom are going along with 4 others. I'm running the video feed from downstairs. Wait, Benny said. What about Rafter and me? This is going to be our first battle, right? Dad ignored Benny. Where are we going? What are those fallacious Johnsons trying to pull off this time? Dad shook his fist. The Split Rocket Museum, Rodney said. It's just like we suspected. They're making a move on the White Knight Diamond. Dad slapped his knee. I knew it! As soon as I read that they were bringing the White Knight to town, I knew that Johnsons would try to steal it. And he shook his fist. What's the diamond worth anyway? Shoo bang! Oh, $4.8 million, Rodney said. It's roughly the size of your head. Shoo bang! Dad exclaimed. That's a big diamond. That would buy those villains a whole lot of evil. Dad, Benny didn't sound happy. Why did Grandpa leave us off the list? Don't we get to go? In Benny's excitement to get outside, he had forgotten his slippers. His feet were red from standing in the snow. The look on his face was one of desperation, as if all of the self-worth hinged on whether or not Dad would let him go. Dad, I said finally. Forcefully, I tilted my head towards Benny. Dad finally looked at us. He bent over and put his hands on Benny's shoulders. I'm sorry, Benny, he said. We don't have your suits ordered yet. Plus, we're working on a surprise. I don't want a surprise, Benny said. I want to go to the battle. It's not fair. You can watch the battle on the monitors downstairs, Dad said. I know how much you love that. I don't want to watch the battle, Benny said. I want to be in the battle. Please? Dad hung his head and sighed. Not this time, Benny. I am so sorry. Benny looked like he wanted to say more, and then he followed Rodney out of the kitchen. My little brother was right. It wasn't fair. You couldn't save the day by sitting in a basement watching a screen. I followed my brothers into the living room. Rodney went to the piano. He played the first few lines of Beethoven's Bagatelle in A minor. A picture of dogs playing backgammon slid to the side, revealing the staircase descending to the root cellar. Rodney went down the stairs, then Benny, and I was about to follow when Mom came up from the root cellar. I've seen my parents in their super suits at least 100 times, but it always takes my breath away. There's something about seeing a real superhero standing just a few feet away that makes you feel like you're dreaming, like action and adventure could explode at any time. Our super suits are part Kelvar, part titanium plate. We've copied the designs from the military, and then we make modifications as needed. Of all the cool weapons and gadgets my family owns, I have to admit the super suits are my favorite. Almost all the suits have a hydraulic system made up of pistons and heavy-duty springs. When you lift large objects, pistons kick in and give you extra strength. When you run, springs give you superior speed. If a Johnson grabs you and tries to bend your leg backwards, the titanium armor protects you. Mom's suit is forest green and a mustard yellow with a black fringe, the Bailey's family colors. A carbon fiber helmet covers her head, and large goggles cover her eyes and part of her face. I exhaled slowly as I watched Mom go through the living room towards her bedroom. I need to get a hairpin or I'll be fighting both the Johnsons and my bangs. In another moment, she returned from her room. She slipped through the secret entrance and down to the root cellar. I followed. My family goes to great pains to make sure the main and top floors of our house look normal, but the root cellar is where we can relax and be ourselves, where we can really be super. Mom met up with Dad, and they strolled towards the back exit. The tunnel led some stairs and a hatch that opened out the ravine behind our house. You can't exactly walk out of our front door dressed in your super suit. I turned and headed towards the computer room. My family puts cameras in their helmets, and they record the battles, and this allows Rodney to give directions or warnings to the teams. Of course, a happy side effect of that is that anybody who doesn't get called to go to battle can watch it from home. Benny and I had stopped watching cartoons when we learned the family secret. All we did was watch past battles over and over again. Rodney sat in front of the bank of darkened computer monitors. He flipped a few switches on the control panel, and Benny sat next to him, and I grabbed a chair on the other side. Okay, we'll be ready to roll, said Rodney. Let's test a few things out, shall we? His fingers flew over the keyboard as one by one the monitors came to life, a different video feed appearing on each one. He put a headset with the attached microphone. Dad, can you read me? Dad's voice crackled over the speaker system. I read you loud and clear. We're on our way to the museum now. We're all set back here at home, Rodney said, and he switched off the mic and turned to Benny. Okay, Benny, before we get to the museum, what did I tell you to remember? Benny rolled his eyes and let out a sigh. Not to stare at one monitor. Do you have your Benny bag? Benny's face turned red. Yes, I have my Benny bag. Let's see it. Benny held up a small brown lunch bag. Watching a video feed from a helmet cam can make a person dizzy. I found that if I look at different monitors, I don't get sick. But Benny has a bad habit of staring at just one monitor until he threw up. After ruining 3 of Rodney's keyboards, my older brother made Benny hold a barf bag every time he watches a battle. But since Mom didn't like the word barf, Rodney started calling it a Benny bag. Dad's voice came on over the speakers. We've landed on the roof. We're going in through the elevator shaft. Excuse me. I looked up at the screen and could see through Mom's camera that Dad stood on the museum's roof. I can open the front door if you want, Rodney said. It's all electronic, and their security system is a joke. That's okay, son, Dad said. The elevator shaft seems a little more heroic than just going in through the front door. Additional video feeds came online as soon as the Baileys arrived. Dad flew to the street to pick up Uncle Ralph, Aunt Carol, and their daughter Jessie. Jack arrived too, a stream of water shooting from his hands, allowing him to float up to the roof. Dad accessed the elevator shaft and began flying relatives down to the first floor, where the museum kept the White Knight. In a few moments, they were all in the main room with the diamond. Uncle Ralph reports no sign of Johnson's, Dad said. Jessie's going to sweep the perimeter. Aunt Carol is getting the diamond to hold for safekeeping. You've turned off the alarm, right, Rodney? Finished before you even entered the building, Rodney said. Otherwise, your little elevator break-in would already have the police on their way. I watched the monitors. The museum was so big. I had a hard time keeping track of where everybody was. Hey, Rodney, I said, can you turn on the map view? Coming right up, Rodney said. One of the monitors switched to a map of the museum. Each relative showed up as a green dot. Jesse's dot patrolled the second floor, while Carol's dot stood in the center of the main floor. Other dots were scattered around the building. Okay, it's probably time I admit something. We win about half of our battles with the Johnsons, which would be pretty good, I guess, except that we really send out 6 to 8 people. Tonight we had 6. The Johnsons always send 4. 4 Johnsons against 6 or 8 Baileys. It's a little embarrassing. I used to think it was because the Johnsons were better than us, but now I know they're not. I don't just watch the battles, I devour them. After 3 years of doing this, I figured out their secret. The Johnsons work together as a team. We go in with each family member doing his or her best, but we never work together. Benny and I have talked about this a lot. We agreed that when we go into battle, we'll stick together. We'd help each other out, and if we worked as a team, I knew we could handle anything the Johnsons threw at us. Of course, that was before we got the belly button and polyester powers, and one more dream of mine was crushed to the mushy jam under the calloused toes of reality. Still, one of the things I love about battle is trying to figure out the best tactics, looking at the layout of a building or landscape and deciding how best to defend or attack. It's complicated. You have to know which powers each person has and decide whether they be the most effective. Look at that, I said. There are only 3 ways into the diamond room, and we aren't guarding any of them. We really need to get more organized. What do you mean? Benny liked hearing my ideas. How would you do it? Well, look, I said, pointing to the monitor. You have entry points from the hall, this hall, and then the air ducts. No windows, no other doors. Air ducts are easy. You just put a guy here, and no one gets past you. Then you position 2, maybe 3 people here. That lets you watch both halls. 3 people can guard the entire space. If you wanted, the others could hide and surprise the villains when they showed up. Benny nodded. Yeah, I think that would work pretty well. But look, I said, Jessie's up here on the second floor. They could take her by surprise and nobody would even realize it. Uncle Ralph is in the men's room. No, actually, that's the ladies' room. And Dad, I don't know what Dad's doing. Probably looking at the art. I mean, for crying out loud, the Johnsons could walk right in the front door and it would take everybody by complete... A burst of static filled the computer room. My heart jumped into my throat as white noise bounced off the cement walls of the cellar. That's not good, Rodney said, typing some commands into the keyboard. Johnson's coming in the front door, Dad said, the first part of his message cut off. I looked at the map. Red dots poured in through the main entrance. I walked as 4 Johnsons raced into the museum. The dots representing Aunt Carol and Dad bumped into each other as the family tripped over themselves, moving to intercept. See, I said to nobody in particular, caught completely by surprise, and now the whole thing just became a chaotic free-for-all. Maybe so, Rodney said, grinning, but free-for-alls are a lot of fun. There's no time for thinking during a battle. Is one of those dots Juanita? Benny asked. I can't tell, Rodney said. They're all moving pretty fast. I sat transformed in front of the monitors. I watched as the green and red dots danced and weaved around the map of the museum. I watched as the live video feed, looking for the tactical opportunities or errors. Nothing beats watching a battle from start to finish. It's like watching a ballet, except the costumes are cooler, and these are explosions, fighting, and large objects hurtling through the air. Stay out of the West Wing, Rodney said. They brought their Moulton, and Jack is fighting her. The whole room is filling up with gravel. I looked at Jack's video feed. It was just like Grandpa described. Every time the molten Johnson sprayed lava, Jack sprayed right back into with water, cooling the rock until it crumbled to gravel when it hit the ground. Darndest thing I ever seen, I said, smiling. I heard a groan and looked over at Benny. He sat on a stool, staring at a single monitor, his head turned sideways, his eyes crossed. Benny, look at another monitor, Rodney shouted. My stomach feels dizzy, Benny said. I've seen that look before. He's going to blow, I warned, sliding my chair backwards. Rodney waved his hands. In the bag, Benny, in the bag. Benny grabbed the bag up on the desk and held it up to his mouth. My stomach lurched to the left a little. Oh, for crying out loud, Rodney said, shaking his head. Benny pulled the bag away from his mouth. Brrr, Benny belched, was loud enough to be heard over the sound of the battle. I didn't throw up, Benny said quickly, his face still a little green. False alarm. Hang on, Rodney typed in a few commands on the keyboard. 2 of the monitors went blank and then returned to life. The video feed had changed from the helmet cams to a steady view. I just tapped into the museum security camera system. You watch these 2 monitors, Benny. That should help you with your little problem. Benny patted his stomach and smiled. Thank you very much. Who's got the diamond? I asked Rodney, looking back to the screens. It had been passed back and forth like a football. Rodney pointed. Uncle Ralph's got it. He's taunting their Frosty with it. See? 3 Johnsons lurched towards Uncle Ralph, forcing him to toss the diamond to Dad, who caught it and flew through the air. Benny gasped. Hey, that is Juanita, he said. Where? And I searched the screen. She's on monitor 8. Dust filled the screen, giving the image a fuzzy look. But even wearing her new supersuit, complete with helmet and mask, Juanita was still recognizable. The right height, the right hair color, even the way she moved was unmistakable. What's her power? I asked. I haven't seen her do anything yet, Benny replied. Juanita raised her hand and a stream of water burst towards Dad. Just like Jack, I thought. A gusher, Benny said, his voice hushed. That's not good. But not too bad, I said. Gushers can throw so much water at you it feels like a wave, or they can shoot a stream so it can cut through like a knife. But a power like that would be hard to use at school without everyone noticing. Dad dodged the water, but just barely. He dropped the diamond and it tumbled to the floor. I'd be watching so many screens, even I was feeling a little dizzy. Where'd the diamond go? I asked. Mom's got it, Rodney replied. I spotted the diamond glowing blue, flying towards Mom. Juanita shot a blast of water at her, but Aunt Carol stepped between Mom and the wave, and Aunt Carol has a power similar to Great Aunt Silva Matilda's. A fireball shot out of her hand and met the liquid, turning it into a hissy cloud of steam. Oh yeah, Benny said, pumping his fist. Once we know your power, Juanita, we can handle anything you throw at... I stared in disbelief as Juanita turned to face Aunt Carol. A bolt of lightning erupted from her hands, narrowly missing Aunt Carol. Aunt Carol dove for cover as a second bolt erupted over her head. Rodney gasped. Benny looked over at me, his mouth hanging open. What the? He watched in stunned silence. The room flickered with light from the monitors. Benny finally spoke. Juanita is a super. I couldn't believe it. I shook my head. She can't be. That's just a myth. Isn't it, Rodney? A super is a person with just not one superpower, but all the superpowers. Stories of supers were just legends like King Arthur. My family has records of superheroes that go back 300 years, and nobody has ever had more than one power. But unless the monitors were lying, Juanita Johnson, the girl in my algebra class, was a super. Rodney shook his head. I don't believe it. But lightning, water, his voice trailed off, his eyes never leaving the monitors. Look at that. He pointed at the screen where Juanita hovered over the two Baileys. She can fly, too. Benny sounded stunned. This is not good, Rodney said. Not good at all. Someone had frozen Mom, maybe Juanita, since apparently she could do everything. Mom's hand stuck out of the wall of ice, gripping the diamond. It looked like a mother of all fancy door handles. Johnson plucked the diamond from Mom's hand. He turned and smiled, and his lips curled up into a sneer. He began to talk, but his words didn't come over the speakers. Looks like he's going to start bragging and lecturing, I said, that they must think they've won. Look at Jessie, Benny said. My cousin appeared over the villain's shoulder, partially hidden behind a large clay sculpture. Jessie raised her arms, and lightning crackled into the spear between her hands. She's whipping up the ball, Lightning, Rodney said. This is going to get good. Someone must have warned the Johnsons, because he started to turn. Before he could escape, Jessie's hands flew forward. Each of the monitors flashed a bright white and then went black. She short-circuited the museum's cameras, Rodney said. He leaned forward and started pecking at the keyboard, trying to regain visual. Benny, do you need another bag? No, this one's still clean. One by one, the screens jumped back to life. He looked like my family was running. Maybe Juanita had been too much for them. Dad, Rodney spoke into the microphone. What happened? Dad's voice came across the speaker, his voice proud. Your cousin saved the day. That's what happened, he said. The Johnsons have been thwarted, and we will return home in triumph. How? Rodney asked. How'd you get the diamond back? We didn't get it back, Dad said. Jessie blew it up. There were too many pieces to pick up, and now we're leading the Johnsons away from the museum. I looked at Rodney in disbelief. Isn't blowing up the diamond a bad thing? Isn't somebody going to be really upset over that? Rodney shrugged. Maybe. Probably. At least the villains didn't get it. Maybe it's not our finest hour, but it's not a defeat. And considering we were up against a super, we did pretty good. There was nothing else to do. Benny wanted to stay up and wait for Mom and Dad. But I went upstairs and crawled into bed. In the darkness of the room, my breathing came faster. Benny and I weren't just facing a supervillain, but a supervillain. It was really true. We'd have to deal with invisibility, lightning, fire, strength. I wanted to jump out of bed, put on my shoes, and run away. Maybe Benny and I could leave the city and go to a different school. Or maybe we could just move in with Grandpa. I'd like to think I was afraid, not because I was a coward, but because I had brains. Going back to school was crazy. It was insane. Iron resolve, ferocious courage, and a healthy dose of insanity. I realized I had the covers over my head. That's not how a superhero acted. Angry, I pushed aside the covers. A superhero faced challenges. He didn't run. I closed my eyes, and that seemed to help clear my mind. I stared at the map of the museum for so long the dots seemed to float into the darkness behind my eyelids. An idea hit me. A crazy idea. I got out of bed and went to my desk. I pulled out a piece of paper and made a quick sketch of my school. Drawing it like a blueprint, I marked the important rooms, the ones involved in the plan, my algebra class, the lunchroom, the library. I finished the drawing and stared at it. Benny came in from downstairs. What are you doing? When I spoke, I could hear the excitement in my voice. Benny, I think I solved our Juanita problems. Really? Benny said, how? I smiled. We'll do the last thing Juanita would expect. What's that? Benny asked. We're going on the offensive, I said. We're going to take the fight to Juanita, and we're going to get our real powers. Benny grinned in the darkness. Now you're talking like a superhero. And that's the end of chapter 5. On Friday, tomorrow we will read I Wish I'd Brought a Pair of Suspenders, Chapter 6. All right, guys, have a good day. And remember, show us your superpowers by reading. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.